You guys found seats not behind the Christmas tree? Well, thanks everyone for coming tonight. I know you could be doing other things, and it's the holidays, right? So there's lots of other things you could be doing, but I'm really glad that you're here because we have lots to talk about when it comes to inflammation. So I'm guessing you guys are all here because something intrigued you, right, about inflammation. Yeah. And if you could all just raise your hands right now. Raise your hands. Repeat after me. I am inflamed. Because literally everyone is in some way or another. And our lifestyles are such that, it's getting worse and worse. And so most people think inflammation is like a bad word. Come on in. I knew you could hear me back there, so I went ahead and got started. They think it's a bad word because it's affiliated with so many different things, but it actually serves a purpose. So we're going to go through some of that, like why inflammation happens in the first place and what you can do about it. And so the reason I'm excited that you guys are here, whoops, I gotta turn this on first, let's see if that works, yeah, is because we want people to be healthy and well, right? And sometimes what we have to do is literally shake people alive, right? We have to really shake some sense into people because you get so complacent, if you will, and you're not really thinking that things are affecting your health the way they really are. And this is a big one. It's a big one. And so I love seeing you guys all here. And I know we're entering into the season where it's not always easy to stay on track with everything. But the whole idea is that you get some of these concepts into your head and into your heart so that you can start to make these changes. Hi, come on in. There's a seat right there. You can come sit right up front. You don't want to sit behind the Christmas tree, so take your pick. But yeah, so we have to at least be aware of these things, right? And it's not a game of perfect, especially this last little bit of the year. But let's try to be as good as we can, right? So that we can, come January 1st, hit the ground running. And so, 'tis the season for what?
Sugar.
Yeah.
Sweets, cookies,
sugar. All of the sugar. And so I always joke about the fact that people say it's cold and flu season when really it's high sugar and stress season, right? Because once your immune system is suppressed in that way, when you're eating lots of sugar and you're stressed to the max, then you are susceptible to things like that. And inflammation is no different. So I want to talk about, and what do I have on the slide here? People could consume up to 158 grams of sugar just on Christmas Day. Hi, Mary. Yeah, and so of course on Christmas, like we have all the things, the candy and the cakes, and everybody's bringing all of the things. But that's Christmas Day. But people are eating a lot of sugar on a regular basis, and so I think it was like back in the 1700s, people ate about 4 pounds of sugar a year. Now we're eating over 100 pounds of sugar a year. Right? And so that just goes to show you that like since the 1700s, 1800s, our food supply is so off track and it all is just sugar, and more sugar. Let me move over here so you guys can at least see these slides a little better. So it's all sugar, right? And we have to be aware of that. And so people will say, well, I don't eat a lot of sugar. I don't like cookies and cakes and candies and all of those things. But listen, if you're eating pasta sauce, yogurt, any kind of condiments, salad dressings, bread, crackers, any of those things, you're eating a lot of sugar. And so all of that adds up. And I think I have, let's see, when you have these sugar and rancid oils and you have all of this stress on top of all of that, you end up with all of this inflammation. And we're gonna get into that. But I want to see, I thought I had a slide here on the different names for sugars, because there's like 56 different names for sugars, right? So when you're reading a label, it's not going to just say sugar, it's going to say things like maltitol, and it's going to have things like dextrose and fructose. Do you need some water? Come on up and get it. Dextrose and maltitol and all of these other additives and things that are anything ending in OSE.
As a
right?
diabetic, I know all of them.
Yes, yeah. And so I thought I had slides in here about I'm gonna wait and get to it because I think I have slides in there about that. But when it comes to inflammation, so what is it? You guys think it's like I said, it has a negative connotation, but it serves a purpose. So inflammation, all it really is your body's response to some sort of insult, right? So let's use the example of a sprained ankle. what happens when you sprain your ankle?
It swells.
Lots of pain, it swells, it starts to inflame, right? But in that case, when you think about it, it's like your body's doing the right thing at the right time for the right reason, all of the time. You may not understand the inner workings of it, but that's what's happening. And so when you sprain your ankle and it swells and it gets inflamed, you want that to happen because it's bringing all the blood, the fluid there, bringing all the nutrients, right, and taking all the bad stuff away. And so when we have this inflammation, it's indicating something's wrong, right? And so you have really two different kinds of inflammation. One is acute, that's sudden or unexpected, like we said with the sprained ankle. It could be a bee sting, it could be exposure to some kind of toxin. But the one we really have to worry about, and the reason why I had you guys all raise your hand, is this one. It's this chronic inflammation due to dietary, lifestyle, not paying attention to the 5 essentials, right? And so that is where a lot of the problems come in. And so I want to go back and talk about the sugar really quickly, because there's several ways that sugar increases inflammation. And I don't know if you guys know this, but I really want to hammer the sugar thing because it's so important. And a couple of you guys have done our advanced plan, right? Who knows what the advanced plan is? You guys do. So one of the tenets of the advanced plan is to eliminate sugars and everything that turns to sugar, even some of the high sugar fruits, because several things happen, and especially when it comes to inflammation. So one is when you're eating a lot of sugar and it's combining with the fats and the proteins in your bloodstream, you develop what are called advanced glycation end products, right? What's the acronym for that? AGES, AGES. Right? And so it causes inflammation and literally causes premature aging. And so that's one thing that happens. Another thing that happens is it makes your gut more permeable, right? So we do testing in the office, and I haven't tested a single person yet that hasn't had gut issues, including things like leaky gut. So sugar makes your intestinal wall more permeable, and then it causes an immune response, it causes inflammation, right? And then the next thing that happens is everybody knows that cholesterol is like a bad word too, right? But it's not necessarily the cholesterol, it's the oxidation of the cholesterol that becomes a problem. And so when you're eating lots of sugar, it oxidizes the cholesterol and therefore causes inflammation. So that's the third way. And then the fourth way is that obviously it's going to impact your blood sugar. Right? When you impact your blood sugar, then you have to worry about insulin, then you have to worry about insulin resistance and weight gain and potential diabetes. But insulin resistance and excess insulin and blood sugar is inflammatory, right? So all of those things when you're eating sugar are happening behind the scenes, and each one of those individually causes inflammation. So we've got to pay attention to this. You've got to get it at least under control in your diet. Now, at this last little bit of the year, if you can't get rid of it entirely, you have to at least minimize it, right? So we talked about acute and chronic inflammation. And so if you have this chronic inflammation, it indicates that you have stressors in your life, and they can be a lot of different kinds of things. But this is the whole notion of what came first, the chicken or the egg, right? So your body is responding to something, which is why there's inflammation. And then once you're in this state of chronic inflammation, it's almost like the dam breaks open and then all the other things start to happen, right? But inflammation is an indicator that something's already wrong, right? And so that's why we kind of have to switch our thinking about inflammation, because it's not always a bad thing. It's a warning sign that something is happening. And so many of you guys see these anti-inflammatories, right? These NSAIDs. People pop these things like candy, Advil, Aleve, Motrin, Tylenol, all of these things for things like headache or any kind of inflammation, joint pain, all of these things. But, the reason that they so-called work is because they block a pathway of enzymes, right? So people will say, oh, well, they work for me. They took my pain away. They took my inflammation down. But anytime you're trying to circumvent what the body's trying to do, it's not a good thing, right? You can never trick your body because the body knows what it's doing every single time and for the right reasons. And I don't know if you guys know this, and I could have pulled up 8 million studies about it, but NSAIDs are linked to gastric bleeding, cardiac abnormalities, acute renal failure. I mean, they're showing, and I see kids like on the soccer field or whatever popping these things. They all have Advil and things, and the girls have Motrin in their bags, right, for PMS and things like that. But little kids are popping these things like crazy. And over time, again, you're circumventing what the body's trying to do, and you end up with all of these side effects. And so why not work on natural ways to decrease the inflammation, right? So that's what we want to talk about. So we always, when we do these workshops, give you kind of the bad news and then the good news. And this is all bad news, right? And so, like I said, it becomes this vicious cycle. So once you have some sort of insult into your body, and your body's reacting by inflammation somehow, then you end up, once you're in this state of chronic inflammation, the floodgates open, like I said, cardiovascular disease, diabetic complications, cancer, neurological disorders, pulmonary disease, metabolic disorders, autoimmune disorders, bone and joint, all of those things. And so once you're inflamed, you leave yourself susceptible to a cascade of other effects, right? Because something is wrong, and if you don't address it and remove it, right, remove those stressors, then you're gonna end up going on this path. And I mean, it's crazy because every disease process, when you look to the root of it, there's inflammation involved at some level, right? And so you've got to get inflammation out. If you're going to combat any of these things, you have to get the inflammation down, right? And so when I was talking about the oxidation of the cholesterol, a lot of times you'll see people with their C-reactive protein. Have you guys heard of that marker before? C-reactive protein, you can get it through a blood test. It'll be elevated. And C-reactive protein is a marker for inflammation. So if that's high, you know your body's riddled with inflammation. And so that's a good marker when it comes to cardiovascular disease and things like that. But all of these things, I mean, it's so, it's like this big vicious cycle, and people have to break it at some point. And so how do you do that is what we're gonna get into. So warning sign, like I said, this is one of the biggest ways that you can bring down inflammation in your body, and that is through your diet, right? So you guys know what this stands for?
No.
The SAD diet? Anyone? No?
Sugar.
Standard
Really?
American?
Yeah, who said that?
Oh,
yes!
Standard American diet.
Standard American diet. And the acronym is just SAD, right? Like the advanced glycolysis, AGES. It's sad. It's just sad where we are. It's sad what we've done to our food supply. I mean, and when I think about, our little kids are starting out. What's that?
It's just processed.
Yeah, it's all processed, and most of it is sugar. And if it's not sugar, it's damaged fats and it's toxins, right? And so we have to avoid all of those things. And I think this is where I had those slides in there when people say, oh, I don't eat sugar, but all of those things that I mentioned before have sugar in it. When you add those all up throughout the day, when you get to the end of the day, I think the last time I looked at it, it's like 58 grams of sugar people are eating on a day. And it's not like they're taking sugar out of a 5-pound bag of sugar. It's accumulated in all those things that people are eating. So it's crazy. Now here's my list. I knew I put it in there somewhere. All of these things are sneaky sugars that are in your foods. And so I think a couple of you have been on my shopping tours, but we literally pick up packages and we teach you how to read labels and how to find this stuff in your foods. But I mean, it's so prevalent now that you are hard pressed to find foods that don't have all this stuff in there, right? Yeah. So you have to be a super sleuth when it comes to this stuff, because there's a lot of it. One of the things that I highlight when I do my shopping tours is the juice section, the green juices. Right, and people will say, oh, I'm gonna go get a green juice that has vegetables in it. And it is loaded with sugar. And now, granted, it's sugar from fruits, most of it, but it has more sugar in it than a soda. More sugar than a soda. And not that you should go drink a soda, because there's other problems with that, but I mean, people just don't realize. And one of the tricks that marketers will use is they put, you have to look at the serving size. Because I think in that case with the green juice, it says 28 grams of sugar or whatever, but there's 2 servings in one bottle. So you have to multiply it by 2. And then it's more than a soda, right? So you have to be really good about reading your labels. And we've got to get, and some of this stuff is just processed sugar, like the maltodextrin, like you said, it's processed. It's not even like sugar cane from the field or from beets or something like that. It's completely processed. So, and you mentioned like, you know, all the things. So artificial sweeteners are like, they've always been touted for diabetics, right? Because they don't spike your blood sugar. Did you guys ever wonder why they don't?
Still do.
Yeah, that is true.
Sucralose still bumps my blood sugar.
Yes, I'm so glad you said that. Yes,
Splenda.
I'm so glad you said that.
Stevia doesn't so much, but the sucralose like you find in all the diet sodas,
Yeah,
it bumps my blood sugar.
yeah, and it's so good that you said that because all of these things affect every body differently,
Yeah.
right? And so you have to know. But the thing is, like, it has no calories, and so the reason that it doesn't, or they say that it doesn't bump your blood sugar, or that it doesn't have any calories, is because in order for something to be called a calorie, your body has to. It's basically based on heating water up 1 degree, right? So that's a calorie. But if your body doesn't know what to do with it, it literally passes through without that process happening. So it can be called 0 calorie, but it still has its effect on the body, right? You can't trick the body. And so they've done study after study that shows that when you eat something sweet, your body recognizes that it's sweet and it starts releasing enzymes and it starts doing all the things to say, hey, we have sugar coming in. But then if there's not sugar coming in, it's like all of these things happen, but it's kind of a trick, right? So it's never a good idea. And they found that people who are trying to diet or whatever, and they try to use these artificial sweeteners, end up gaining more weight because it's that mechanism that like your body thinks sugar's coming and it never comes, right? So, and that's just, again, you have to know what these things are called. There's sucralose, which is Splenda. There's aspartame, which is NutraSweet and Equal. There's something called Neotame. There's saccharin. I mean, so again, this stuff is in so many foods. And it blows my mind that you'll sometimes see sugar and artificial sweeteners. Like a lot of times in gum, you'll see sucralose and sugar. A lot of times in yogurt, you'll see sucralose and cane sugar or fructose or whatever it is. And it blows my mind because I'm like, why do we need both, right? Why do we need both? And so again, all of our nutrition plans are based on trying to stay as close to the source as possible, unprocessed. And so when you look at something like artificial sweeteners, I mean, typically I don't like to think of eating anything that's artificial, right? So the name itself is like, why am I eating this? But it's man-made in a factory, it's highly processed, it's full of chemicals, yeah.
What about things like stevia and monk
Yeah,
fruit?
so I think that's let's see. Yes, that's my next slide. Good question. Answer for that. So, of course, I do recommend, and I have a blog that has some recipes on it. I'll show you a link to a recipe book that I have for the holidays. And so stevia, monk fruit, erythritol, xylitol, all of those things are okay. Stevia comes from a leaf, so it's not man-made, it comes from a leaf. But I will say, and I've always promoted this stuff like, yeah, go ahead and use it, and you can sweeten your tea with it, and you can make desserts with it, and all of that stuff. And I've kind of changed my tune a little bit, just because, I mean, I do use that stuff, but I use it in extreme moderation, right? And so I kind of felt bad one time. I have a recipe for a chocolate cake, right? I actually just made one for a Christmas party on Saturday. And it uses monk fruit sweetener or stevia. And it tastes really, really good, right? And so one time I was coaching someone on nutrition and I had them do a food journal and I said, okay, what did you have for dinner last night? And they said, oh, I had your chocolate cake that was on your blog. And I'm like, oh, okay, that's awesome. Like, what else did you have? No, I had the chocolate cake for dinner. Like the whole chocolate cake. And I was like, that's not like what I meant. So you can't just rely on, the sweets, because I really, really have realized over all these years, replacing that kind of sugar addiction with a healthier form of something sweet isn't always the best, right? And so this stuff has such a stronghold on us, such a stronghold on people in general, that it's almost like you have to break that stronghold, right? So instead of using exorbitant amounts of stevia and monk fruit, let's try to curb our need for all the sugar in the first place, right? So I have changed my tune on that a little bit. A lot of people say, you'll never change your mind about anything, but I do. So it's true though, you don't wanna have to rely on something sweet, right? It's still feeding into that whole problem of why do you need something sweet in the first place, right? And if you think about it, I really like to go back to the origins. So back in the day, like before we had everything, what would people eat? What was sweet? You may find some berries in a patch. You may find some honey if you're lucky. Maybe maple syrup if you lived up north. Dates, strawberries, things like that. And so I said honey. So you could use some of those things also in moderation, as long as you're not dealing with a disease process. But again, people didn't encounter those things and eat a ton of them, right? They weren't eating a whole hive of honey. They weren't eating a whole tree of syrup, right? They weren't eating the whole bush of berries. So we have to really think about that and break our addiction to sugar, because it's an addiction. And when I do my nutrition 101s, I tell people to go and Google sugar is toxic. Like just Google that term, and you'll find pages and pages and pages, because that's a fact. It's toxic. Sugar is toxic, but it tastes really good and it gets people really addicted to food, and it causes all of these problems that we're talking about. So did that answer your question? Yeah, so you can use it, just don't go crazy with it. And then, so the good news is that we have the ability to decrease inflammation in our body and use the 5 essentials. And these aren't a la carte, right? You have to do all of them in order to have a healthy body and to decrease inflammation, since that's what we're talking about. And so people are always like, oh, well, what do I need to do? Like, what's the magic bullet? And so I'm going to go through some things that obviously are healthy for you, but I have the question marks here because there's no magic berry, there's no magic like thing or potion or whatever that you can do. You have to do it all in unison, right? Everything works together and everything is a cascade of effects. And so although there are some really good things that you can do, we mentioned berries, and what I want to talk about berries is because when it comes to inflammation, we have to think about antioxidants too, because there's a correlation between antioxidants and inflammation. So anything that you see that's like brightly colored, that's going to have a lot of phytonutrients in it, is going to be filled with antioxidants, and that's what we want, right? And I think I put in here, yeah. So as I mentioned, we do testing in this office, and so what I love about it is it takes guesswork out of things. And so we know exactly what's going on in your body. So when it comes to antioxidants, there are markers in there, right? Which say, hey, let's look at these antioxidants. So vitamin A, vitamin C, CoQ10, glutathione, all of those things. When you see these numbers in the red or the yellow, it means that you don't have enough antioxidants, right? When you don't have enough antioxidants, you're more prone to inflammation. So this is a good thing to know, right? This is a great thing to know if this is going on in your body so that you can take care of it. Now, same thing down here is this is basically showing what's going on with your cell wall, right? So this is lipid peroxides, which are free radicals. You guys have heard of free radicals, right? Yes. The opposite of antioxidants. And so when these free radicals are in your body, they're damaging your cell walls, meaning bad stuff comes in and good stuff can't come in and bad stuff can't get out. It's almost like think about a rubber band. You know, when a rubber band is new, it's kind of pliable. When it gets old, it kind of gets stiff and it like doesn't pull away as much. And that's what happens here. And you can see glutathione, which is your body's master antioxidant, all of those things. So this is a great thing to know, because a lack of antioxidants and more free radicals lends itself to inflammation and thus other disease. So this is really, really cool. And if your body doesn't have enough antioxidants, which by the way, you have to get these from your diet, right? Glutathione your body can make, but the rest of them you have to get from your diet. Did that make sense to you guys?
Yes.
Yeah. So
Kim, one question.
yeah.
How do you get those results we just showed up there?
I'll talk about that in a minute.
Okay,
Yep.
gotcha.
Are you gonna send this all out to us?
I can, if you want it, I would be happy to.
Yes,
The
that's my
file will
favorite.
probably be pretty big, so I'll have to see, I might be able to turn it into a PDF. Did you guys sign in when you came in?
Yes.
Okay, so if I have your names, yes, I will send it to you. How about that? So then let's talk about, and again, we're trying to come up with like maybe the top things that can help with inflammation. So obviously anything that has antioxidants is gonna be great, but omega-3s, omega-3 fatty acids, and again, they're called essential fatty acids because they have to come from your diet. Your body can manufacture a lot of things, but it cannot manufacture these fatty acids. And so you guys have heard, right, omega-3s for inflammation, like it's pretty commonly known now. And so eating things like wild-caught fish, especially something like salmon that is loaded with these omega-3s is great. But I'll tell you, like I eat a lot of wild-caught salmon. I even eat sardines and anchovies, which I love now. I didn't start out that way. But those little suckers are packed with omega-3s, and I thought I was doing pretty good. But when I did my testing, I was more deficient than I thought I would be in omega-3s. Same thing with my daughter. She's a nutrition major. She just graduated with a nutrition degree. She did the testing, and her omega-3s were low. And she eats a lot of fish too. So it's like we just, for whatever reason, like in the current environment that we live in, cannot get enough of this stuff. And so how else do you get it? You can supplement with it. But that comes, like you have to be really careful with that too, because a lot of the omega supplements out there are garbage, basically. I mean, where are these fish coming from? What's in them? How are they sourcing it? Does it have mercury in it? All of these things. And so that's why I promote the Max Living brand of supplements, because I know it's clean and it's effective and it's gonna work. But again, this is part of the testing that we do. And you can see like there's need for inflammation support, and all of that is based on, you know, these omega-3 fatty acids. And this is really, really cool. It gives us a whole snapshot of what's going on with your fatty acid ratios. Because when you have a fatty acid ratio that's based on omega-6s and not enough omega-3s, that puts you in an inflammatory state, right? And it causes things like, it shows your cardiovascular risk here. It even breaks down our saturated fat, our trans fats. So trans fats are that bad word that we hear that are in things like oils and junk food, potato chips, things like that. But these trans fats are really damaging too. So you want to know what is going on with these things. And like I said, most everybody is deficient in these healthy omega-3s that are one of the best things you can do for inflammation.
What is the difference between, because when I'm in the drugstore, I'll see omega-3, omega-6. What is it, the chain?
Yes. Yeah, omega-3, omega-6, omega-9, and then there's even something called omega-7s. But the main thing to know is that you need the proper ratio of those things. So most people are omega-6 dominant because that's most of the oils and fats that are in our foods. And so you want to have the proper ratio of omega-3 to omega-6. So that's why looking at some of these ratios is helpful for us to know, you know, how your body's responding to that. But like this is inflammation, right? When you don't have enough omega-3s, your body cannot possibly ward off the inflammation. And so again, it's so cool that this isn't any guesswork, right? It's right there in black and white. And so it tells us not only what you need to do with your diet, but what you need to do with supplementation. So like in this case, taking a lot of omega-3s and a lot of DHA is gonna be beneficial in many regards. So it's not just inflammation, it's lots of other things too. Make sense? And then leafy greens, obviously, this is a good thing to eat for anything that we're talking about. I could put this into any workshop, but they're loaded with antioxidants, they're loaded with vitamins and minerals. And you know, it's funny, you're not gonna see like the Heart Healthy logo on a package of kale, right? But it'll be on the package of Cheerios. And it makes no sense. It's like, obviously they paid for that logo on the box of Cheerios. Right? And so when it comes to inflammation or things like heart disease, obviously the kale is bringing you more health than the Cheerios are, right? So we have to really be smart consumers in that regard too, and know that we're kind of being duped on that one. So we already talked about this, but yeah, again, we want to mitigate this stuff, but there are natural sweeteners that you can use, and they still taste really good. I use them all the time. So balancing blood sugar is going to be huge for inflammation, but this is that max omega-3 that I was talking about. This is just loaded with omega-3s, max greens, which is those leafy greens and berries and antioxidants that I talked about, and then curcumin. I wanted to talk a little bit about that because when it comes to inflammation, I can't tell you, I think I put it in here, yeah. I did a Google search, curcumin and inflammation. This was 1 page, 2 page, 3 page, 4 page. I could have kept going, right? So there is study after study showing the benefits of curcumin, which is turmeric. Did you guys know that?
Yes.
Turmeric comes from a root. So again, it's a food. And so that's what's cool about some of our supplements aren't even really supplements. They are foods packed into a little capsule, right? So curcumin is one of those things. Basically all that's in that thing is curcumin. So they take turmeric and they grate it and they dry it and they stuff it in there. Same thing with the max greens. That's food. The plant protein, the whey protein, the pure path protein, that's food, right? So those aren't even supplements, it's food. But there are so many studies. And so rather than turning to the NSAIDs, right, the Aleve and the Advils and all of those things, curcumin is extremely effective for that. Now, it doesn't only have protective benefits for inflammation, but cancer, it is so well researched that it's crazy. I can't believe that more people don't know about it or take it or understand its benefits because you can just go and on and on and on. I remember there's a website called Green Med Info, and if you go there, it's a free site, but you can pay for more. And I remember one time downloading, I don't even know what I did with it, all of his articles that he had on curcumin and inflammation and cancer. And it was just like the printer was just like whizzing out paper. It's insane. It's so awesome. So these foods can help us with mitigating inflammation. It's really cool. And then the daily essentials I wanted to highlight too, because again, optimal omega in there. And just to piggyback on what you asked, ideally, once you have your omega ratios in balance, you want to be having the right amounts of all of them. So the optimal omega has omega-3s and omega-6s in it, in the right ratio. So the premise is that if your ratios are already correct, you're taking this to keep them correct, right? But a lot of people are so out of whack that they need additional omega-3s. So that's why I showed you that max omega-3. But then B complex, again, with the antioxidants, it helps with that too. Vitamin D, magnesium, it's just awesome. I recommend it to every single person. It is terrific. Okay, so testing, you asked about testing. So I talked about a couple of that was 2 different pages that I showed you, or pieces of pages. But look at everything that it measures. We're talking about vitamin and mineral deficiencies, blood sugar imbalances, oxidative damage is what I showed you guys with the lipid peroxides, B complex deficiencies, neurotransmitters, gastrointestinal stress. I told you that everybody has those issues, every single person. Stress hormone, mitochondria, it literally gives you a snapshot of your Krebs cycle and how your body's burning fat, carbohydrates, and proteins for energy. Is it doing it effectively? Is there any breakdown? It's awesome. Dysbiosis, fatty acid balance, trans fats, all of that I just showed you. So normally it's a $1,200 test. Max Living got it down to $749 at workshops, and my Nutrition 101s, I do it for $636. So sounds like a lot of money, right? But the thing is, it's not, to me, it's not an expense. It is an investment, right? So it gives you so much information, and it's such a clear, there's no guesswork, which is what is incredible about it. So I can't recommend it enough. Really cool. Okay, so let's move into some of the things that you can do over the holidays, because this is a big deal. And actually, I think I did all of this over the weekend. Here's a great tip, because you're gonna be going to parties and everybody's having these celebrations. And even, I did this one time when I knew I was going out to eat and my friends wanted to go to a restaurant that I wasn't really keen on, right? So what did I do? I ate before I went. Yeah, I mean, it's not a big deal, right? I ate before I went. I knew I was gonna get something healthy. I can still go and hang out and have fun with my friends. But eat before you go. If you have to, that's what you gotta do, right? And it's easier. Plan ahead. And so having a plan, this is one of the things I tell people. You may not be perfect, but at least have a plan. So your plan may be, hey, I'm gonna do really well, I'm gonna eat well and exercise all during the week. On Saturday, I'm going to this party and I'm gonna have 3 drinks and a piece of cake and whatever. You know, I don't know, whatever it is. But at least it was in your plan. So after that, you don't feel bad about it, right? It was in your plan. So you didn't fail, you planned. And so you may have to do some of that, right? And you may have to balance the scales a little bit, right? Instead of just being terrible all the time, at least balance it with doing some of the really good things, right? And it may include some fasting or some, I don't know, you're gonna eat salads, I don't know. Whatever it is. So that's a really good thing to do too. And then here's another great thing. I do this every single time I go somewhere. I make a healthy dish, so it's something I know I can eat, right? If there's nothing else there, I'm gonna eat it and then I'm gonna share it with other people. So that's another little trick that you can do. And it's easier than you think. It requires some degree of planning ahead and commitment and discipline, but you can do it. Like we've been doing this stuff for years and it works. Okay, so mindset. Did you guys know that stress affects inflammation? Mm-hmm. I mean, you do? Okay, because I was like, I don't know, like, do people really connect that stress causes you to become inflamed? But it really, really does. And so in the chiropractic world, we call it the 3 T's: thoughts, trauma, and toxins, right? And so the thought portion of the program is really impactful. Like it really does affect your whole body, your whole system, your nervous system, your immune system, right? Like I said at the very beginning, we're in this, cold and flu season, right? And our immune systems are just taking a beating, and the stress doesn't help, right? It just doesn't help at all. So stress and blood sugar, I mentioned this a little bit, but it's so important because if you don't have your blood sugar balanced, you're going to be in trouble. And so one of the things that happens when your blood sugar gets elevated or is dysregulated, you start to release these hormones that end up with this, vicious cycle of adding more stress, right? So you want to mitigate that as much as possible. And stress actually increases your blood sugar, whether you're eating sugar or not. And so it's a very delicate balance and a very delicate system that you have to be aware of. And so we're constantly bombarding our system with all of these stressors and these bad foods and things like that. So you guys know this, 88% of Americans are stressed during holidays, right? Mm-hmm. You guys stressed during the holidays? Yep. You gotta buy gifts, you gotta do this, you got family coming in. And so we really have to have a plan again to work against that as well, because it affects our health. And then we get to January 1 and we're not feeling good, we wanna lose the weight, we have been stressed the whole time, and now we feel like we're starting over. So let's start doing some of the right things and get ourselves set up for success through the end of the year, and then into the new year. So here's a couple of little practical things too when it comes to Christmas and minimizing stress. Set expectations with your family, right? The best thing you can do is to communicate, and a lot of people, believe it or not, even family members that you love, may try to sabotage you a little bit, right? Have you guys noticed that? Has anyone ever experienced that? I have, right? They're like, you're not gonna do that over the holidays. They're like, oh, just have the drink or just have this or whatever the case may be. So you really have to set those expectations and get buy-in, especially from your immediate family in your house. Prioritize sleep. I know that one is hard. But we have to do it, and I know so many people struggle with sleep, and stress certainly doesn't help that. But you have to try to make sure that you're getting enough sleep. Set aside time, plan events ahead of time. And here's another thing, and I'm really bad about this, so I'm sure some of you guys are too, but ask for help, right? I tend to want to do everything myself, and I told my family this year, because it was kind of a rough year for me, well, for all of us, but I'm like, you know what? We're not doing presents this year. Guess what we're doing? We're going on a trip. So we're going on a trip. There are no presents. What's that? You are too? No presents?
No presents.
Okay, see? And so normally I'm stressed about who needs what and what do the kids want and all this stuff. We're not doing presents. We're going on a trip. And we're having that experience together, and that's it. So, I mean, that's we're shaking it up a little bit, right? You don't always have to do the same thing just based on
Tradition.
tradition. Traditions are good. Now we have our traditions, but it's okay if you're not, doing the same thing that you always have. So, but it's all about communication. So I didn't just tell my kids, hey, you're not getting anything this year. We had a conversation about it. So exercise and inflammation. Did you guys connect that exercise has an effect on inflammation too? I mean, literally all of the 5 essentials have an effect on inflammation and all the other things that come with it. And I want to find this. It was really cool. There was a study where they looked at, it's called TNF alpha, and exercise, even short durations of exercise can help regulate that. So when that is not regulated, it increases your sympathetic response, which is your fight or flight, which is your stress response, right? And so exercise, even short duration, can bring that number into check. And the other thing that it does, this is so cool too, is that exercise activates your immune system, right? So if you think about it, it gets your white blood cells, which are, looking for all those viruses and things like that, on alert, so that your body is ready when you encounter some of these things. And I'll give you today as an example. And I know during the holidays, it's like, oh, I have so much to do and I don't feel like exercising today. So that was me today. I had to prepare for this workshop. I had to do a bunch of stuff, but I still got my workout in, right? I still did it anyway. It wasn't ideal. I didn't want to do it, but I can tell you this. I never regret doing a workout, but I always regret not doing one, right? It's always in the back of my mind, like, I really could have done that. I didn't do it, right? So you just have to commit to it. And I don't care how busy you are. The next slide will show Max T3. I know we have some long-time Max T3ers in here. But this is literally all I've done for years and years and years, and it works. And I'm talking at 6 to 12 minutes, maybe 18 if it's a different kind of day. But 6 minutes, like you can literally get an awesome workout in 6 minutes. And you guys can't tell me you don't have 6 minutes, right? Everybody has 6 minutes. Even if you're like going to the ballpark with the kids, and I used to do it like around the field, I would do sprints or burpees or something, but you can do this. And the good thing too is that anybody can do it. I don't care what the limitations are. I don't care, what excuses you have, or if you have knee replacements or whatever, we can make it work for you. So you just have to do it. It's not really an option. Exercise is an essential. Right? Your body's designed for a certain amount of movement every single day. When it doesn't get it, it's like, flip the switches to disease state, here we go. So, and it's amazing because the exercise, again, all of this plays in together. So if you're trying to reduce inflammation in your body, and you think, oh, well, my ankle's swollen, or I have all this inflammation, or my joints are all swelled, I can't work out, but it's like defeating the purpose. So you have to figure out a way to get the movement in order to decrease the inflammation. What's that?
I said push through it.
Yeah, you gotta push through it sometimes. Now, you don't wanna hurt yourself.
True.
So you don't wanna be working out on a sprained ankle or something like that. But we're talking about this chronic inflammation that's affecting your body, and so doing things like this can definitely help, for sure. And then this is, again, I talk to people about this too, because this a lot of times is the very last thing that people change. And I don't really know why, because it's sometimes the easiest. Because most of it is just making lateral moves, and there's not a big cost factor involved. It's just a matter of knowing what you're being exposed to and eliminating those exposures, and then doing a little bit of detox too, right? And switching to healthier products. But we live in the most toxic environments ever known to man. Like, the amount of toxins that we're exposed to on a daily basis is mind-blowing. And so there's really no reason not to use the healthy non-toxic cleaner versus the Clorox, right? And so if you think about your body as a bucket and you're being exposed to all of these different things, there's only so much your body can take, right? Your bucket fills up, and then what happens when that one more thing comes in? Like one more drop in the bucket, what happens? It overflows. And we see that a lot of times, and the overflow starts happening, and that's where all the symptoms start happening. And so you've got to clean up your environment. And just like with inflammation, I can make you all raise your hand and say, I am toxic too, because everybody is, right? I battle it every single day because I know I'm exposed to things, even though I try to be really good about it. And like I said at the beginning, inflammation is a response to some sort of stressor. And these toxins are stressors just like everything else that we talked about already. And so we don't want to put any more unnecessary work on our body, right? So we want to start looking at cleaning up our environment, and it's really easier than you think. So if you need help, let me know. I've got all of the healthy swaps and things like that, but you really need to think about what exposures you may have. And so for some people it's their work environment, for some people it's their house, for some people it's their cleaning supplies and anything they're putting in and on their skin as well. So gotta clean it up. And I'll tell you, like over the last 2.5, I keep saying 2 years, but it's been more than that now. With this COVID thing, I mean the hand sanitizers, the Lysol, the bleach, they're going in and fumigating buildings, and it's like, I mean, kids are bathing in this stuff. And most of the hand sanitizers, in fact, I haven't found one that doesn't, has triclosan in it, which is a known endocrine disruptor. And so, like, even something as simple as hand sanitizer is a known toxin, and it's accumulating in our bodies, especially little kids. So, and it's just gotten worse and worse because of COVID over the last 2 years. So, oh my gosh, I found some really cool stuff for you guys. What time is it? How am I doing on time?
7:20.
Look at me. I'm doing so good on time. My husband's not here. He talks a lot more than I do. I'll tell him that. No, but I worked on this. I found some really cool stuff. And every time I do one of these workshops, it's not like I just come in here and wing it. I'm doing research and I'm finding new stuff. And like, I found that research study on the exercise thing, but I found some really cool stuff about how to tie in chiropractic. Now, obviously, chiropractic addresses your nervous system, which controls everything. So it stands to reason that inflammation is part of that, part and parcel of that. So a spinal alignment and a healthy nervous system obviously equals healthy inflammatory response. And so I wanted to talk about the vagus nerve, because this is like, I could have done the whole workshop on this. Have you guys heard of the vagus nerve?
No.
You have? Okay, so it's so cool. So you've got cranial nerves. This happens to be the 10th cranial nerve. And I don't know that this is the best picture because it literally innervates everything. Like, it's the longest cranial nerve and it innervates everything. So through your lungs and your intestines and everywhere. So your vagus nerve is so important, and you'll hear the doctors talk about vagal tone. So it's basically like the difference between your parasympathetic and your sympathetic nervous system, right? Because your autonomic nervous system is made up of both. Sympathetic is fight or flight, parasympathetic is rest and digest, right? So you want your body to be in that rest and digest phase, right? Calm, and your body's like doing what it needs to do behind the scenes. You only really want to be in sympathetic when there's a bear, all right, or like someone's trying to chase you down the street and you don't want them, you don't want them to catch you. That's when you want those that sympathetic response. But most of us are in that, fight or flight mode chronically, just like with inflammation, because we're sitting in traffic, or we're stressed about work, or we had a fight with someone in our family, things like that. And so the vagus nerve is so important with that. And you can see heart, lungs, digestive tract. And so you want to positively impact your vagus nerve, so you get your vagal tone in the right space. So chiropractic adjustments, obviously, that's the number one thing that you can do, because when you're getting adjusted, you are working on that vagal tone. You're working on the tone between your sympathetic and parasympathetics anyway. And that, I mean, it's so awesome. And my husband, if he were here, would tell you like a million studies on this stuff. I'll mention one more in a minute. But so how do you affect your vagus nerve? So, and they've even done studies on this to say that it helps with things like anxiety and panic attacks and PTSD and depression, because it puts you in such, that relaxed state, that parasympathetic state. But another thing to look at is heart rate variability. I'm not going to get into it too much, but I have been obsessed with this because it's so cool. It's a marker of longevity, how long you live, how healthy you are, And have you guys heard of heart rate variability before?
No.
HRV? Your Apple Watches actually track it, believe it or not. I don't wear my Apple Watch anymore because I'm kind of afraid of the EMFs and stuff, but for a time I was tracking it, and it was really, really cool. Heart rate variability is not how many times your heart beats, but the time between beats, okay? So when you hear that term, what do you think it means? You want different times between heartbeats, right? So longer, shorter, shorter, longer. Variability is what you really want, which I was like, wow, I've never really thought about that before. But ideally, you have a lot of variability in your heart rate. So it should be pumping, at different intervals, basically is what that means. So when you have a higher heart rate variability, you're more positively impacting your vagus nerve, thus your parasympathetic response. It's really, really cool. I spent a lot of time studying mine, looking at mine, and I'll tell you the results of that in a second. But the vibration plate in the back there, right, that not only sets your adjustment, not only has a direct impact on inflammation, but also a positive impact on your vagus nerve. Breathing exercises. So have you guys heard, like, if someone's having a panic attack, to get them to focus and breathe and do diaphragmatic breathing? Just doing that diaphragmatic breathing, and I have a little sheet that shows you different ways you can do that, but it sets your vagal tone, right? It stimulates your vagus nerve almost immediately, and that's why it calms you down right away, because you're getting into that parasympathetic response. Gargling, laughing, humming, and / singing, that does it as well. Exercise, cold water immersion. Anyone want to do that? Everyone's shaking their head no.
I did that once. My
Yeah.
uncle, he ran a club out in the health club out in Dallas.
Yeah.
And we go in the hot sauna.
Yep.
And then we
And then
go.
plunge. Yeah.
It's great
And
for
you
your
get
body.
out and then you
It
go back.
is. Yeah.
Like we did it like 3 times. I was like, wow.
Yeah. It's
The
crazy.
cold closes up your blood vessels.
Yeah,
and then
it
the
has.
warm opens them up again.
Yep.
So you're changing the good blood and the bad blood. You're swishing it out.
Yeah. Well, there's a lot of there's a lot of benefits to it. And I had a similar experience where we went. It was at a Max Living seminar actually, and we had this guy come in and teach us. It's called the Wim Hof method, but it's a breathing technique. So we taught. It was like a 6-hour thing. We got taught how to breathe properly, and then we did this ice bath. So Sarah did this with me, and we ended up doing it twice. No one else did it twice, but a group of ladies, and I was included. But yeah, it was literally you submerge yourself in ice, and it's crazy because there's tons of benefits, but one big benefit is that it affects your vagus nerve. And then probiotics as well, because everything's connected here in your gut, right? So that's another way to stimulate your vagus nerve. Now, all of that to say, I'll tell you the results of my heart rate variability thing. What do you guys think affected that the most?
What affected it the most?
Mm-hmm. Take a guess.
Roberta.
Probably your sugar intake.
Exercise.
That wasn't number one. Mm-mm.
Your thought.
Stress.
Your adjustment.
Breathing.
Yes, my adjustments were number one. So I would measure it after I got adjusted and before I got adjusted, and the Apple Watch has a little, it'll show you over time, weeks, months, days, hours, right? But the number 2 thing, this was crazy to me, because I was doing cold showers, was cold showers. I was like, dang it, no, I don't want that to be the one, because it's painful. It's painful, but it was so effective. So chiropractic first, and then the cold water. And so I was reading, ideally you're plunging in an ice bath or doing a really, really cold shower all the way. It's horrible, I will say. And you want to stay in there for 2 minutes. Woo! Yeah,
Longest
it's
2
rough.
minutes of your
It's
life.
rough. But if you can't work up to that just yet, and it's winter time
30
too.
seconds.
Even doing just ice in a bowl and putting it on your face, right?
Oh, really?
Yeah. So it's not going to give you as big a response, but yeah, anything, the cold water for whatever reason influences your vagus nerve. So, real quick, and so how this relates to inflammation in the vagus nerve is this study in the Journal of Internal Medicine found that the vagus nerve acts to limit inflammation, and they call it an inflammatory reflex. So what it does is it identifies when there's pro-inflammatory markers in the body, sends a signal up to the brain and says, okay, and then it sends a signal back to the spleen to produce anti-inflammatory neurotransmitters. That's called acetylcholine. So like there's this whole cascade of things that happens behind the scene. Like if you were to sprain your ankle, immediately the vagus nerve is like, okay, I see inflammatory markers. Let me tell the spleen to make these neurotransmitters. Like how cool is that, right? So you want your vagus nerve to be fully functional and attended to. And so it says when this neural circuit is weakened, inflammation can become chronic and out of control. In other words, without a strong, healthy vagus nerve, inflammation levels in the body cannot be properly controlled. And that's pretty amazing. Pretty amazing. And so you can do a lot of these things to stimulate that. And obviously chiropractic adjustments. Have you guys noticed ever when you get adjusted, almost immediately, and I used to have to get adjusted at night because if I got adjusted in the morning, it made me immediately like relaxed and tired. And so I was like, I need to get adjusted in the evenings because it's like almost an automatic like relaxation thing. Have you guys experienced that?
Yeah, the first 3 months that I was doing, when I was still doing the 3 a
Yeah,
day,
yeah.
3 a week,
Mm-hmm.
I'd come home after an adjustment and just sit down for a few minutes, and next thing I know, like an hour has passed by because I fell asleep.
Yeah, I mean, and one of the reasons is because you've been switched into that parasympathetic response and your vagus nerve has been stimulated, which is a good thing, right? It's a good thing. But I think that, I just think it's so amazing. Really, really cool. And so again, just like with inflammation, any of these things are warning signs that something is not working right. Something is not working right. And then, you know, the health being 100% function, I always think about this concept too. And really that's what level of diminished function are you okay with, right? Because function decreases before the first symptom appears. So are you okay with 98% function, 90%, 70%? Because the estimates are that the first symptom doesn't show up until you've already lost 40% of your function.
Mm-hmm.
So by the time you feel the first symptom, you're only at 60% function. And so for me, I'm like, well, I don't want to be there. I want to be 100% function, right? And so you have to be doing all of the things that keep your function as close to 100% as possible. And wouldn't you want to know if it was lessened in any way? So, you know, I used to draw the little thing. So all of the things that you do that can increase your function is what you want to be doing, which are the 5 essentials. Oh, go back. I have another cool quote I found for you guys. This has never been read before. Where is it? Gotta find it. Oh my gosh, where is it? Did I lose it? Ah, found it. Okay, so this is an old school chiropractor. He was from like the 70s, 60s, late 60s, 70s. And if you go see videos of him, he looked like this crazy guy. But he had some of the best chiropractic philosophy, like videos and radio shows that you can ever imagine. But this is really cool because I wanna, before we wrap up, I wanna leave you with this notion of, remember at the beginning I said your body knows what it's doing every single time for the right reasons, and that is because of something called innate intelligence. Right? And so if you think about like a little acorn, how does it know to grow into a giant oak tree? Right? And that little acorn is coded, like the ability to be able to do that. And so imagine how much more our bodies are. So I'm just going to read this to you guys because I want to leave you with this. So just like believe in the power of your body because things are happening behind the scenes and it's so amazing. It's so cool. So it says, the inborn wisdom of any living thing which maintains its parts in active organization for the purpose of function is called innate intelligence. It is the intelligence responsible for all things internal. It makes the upper teeth grow downward and the lower teeth grow upward. It increases heart rate when we walk upstairs. It regulates the action of some 250 different glands simultaneously. It maintains and coordinates dozens of organs, hundreds of muscles, billions of miles of blood vessels, and countless trillions of cells. It never sleeps. It cannot be injured. It is as great as in the moron as in the genius. It always presents 100% in every living thing, from the most complex down to the simplest unicellular particle of life. His name was Reggie Gold. Isn't that amazing? Like, to think about that. To think about how do the upper teeth know to grow down and the lower teeth know to grow up, right? And of course, my favorite quote that I couldn't get through without laughing is, "It's the same in the moron as the genius," right? It works no matter what, behind the scenes. And like, that's classic Reggie Gold. It's so funny. But it's so true. Like, that's what's happening with our bodies, and the innate intelligence is awesome. If we just tap into it more and get out of the way and stop interfering, we'll be better off. So this is that ebook that I was telling you about. It has a bunch of healthy recipes in there. So you can do the QR code, or it's also on my blog, eatsmartmeals.com. But it's got 25 days of good, healthy, using monk fruit, using stevia. I even have in like a suggested Christmas menu and some holiday tips and things like that. But it was fun. I make that stuff all the time. So I hope you guys like not only learn something, but go away with some action steps, because all of the information in the world is great. But if you don't end up doing anything with it, it doesn't matter. Yes?
Could I see the previous slide one more time?
Yes.
If you
Oh, sure. Come on up here if you need to.
You said it's smartmeals.com?
Yeah, eatsmartmeals.com. Eat Smart Meals. Mm-hmm. And so on my blog, this is on there, and then tons of recipes, tons of dinner ideas, tons of like all sorts of tips and things like that. There's even some videos, cooking videos on there. So if you're a visual person and you want to know how to do stuff, I've got some videos on there too. So make sure that you guys walk away from these things just with some goals and some actionable items. And if you need help with anything, I mean, we're more than willing to help you guys. If you're interested in the testing, let us know. I can have the kits ready for you on your next visit, or if you want to stop back by. And again, it's so awesome. So that'd be a really good thing to do before the end of the year, so you can hit the ground running at the first of the year. And then, yeah, you can connect with us always. I'm really good about checking emails. You can call me. You can text into the main text line, and they can find me. But I just want to help you guys be successful. So whatever I can do to help make that happen, I am happy to. So, how did I do? I did well. What's that? Oh, you don't have to clap.
You used to have a center over there. So is it now online now?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, so she's asking about, we used to have the fitness center next door, so now we have, there's maxt3.com, which has the original set of videos, and then we also have maxt3 virtual fitness that has even more videos on it. And so the only things you need at home are an exercise ball and some bands, and you could do everything at home, and it's awesome.
Max T3, what is it? Fitness?
Virtual fitness. Mm-hmm. Yep. But it's awesome. That's what I do every single day. That's the only kind of exercising I do these days. Does anyone else have any other questions, comments before we head out? Oh, you know what? Did you guys get raffle tickets?
Yes.
No.
Okay. Hold on, I got goodies.
If you didn't, I kept track of who you were, so I have one for you.
You got one for me?
Okay, here you go.
Mary.
That's you. Yeah,
I'm
Mary.
gonna practice.
All right, Mary, here you go.
She's talking about
Okay, I'll
like
take
she's
the bucket. The bucket, the little mini bucket. Okay, let's see what I have here. I got some stuff. Okay, how about, oh, I didn't mention this, but, and I personally want chewing gum banned because I think it's horrible and no one looks good chewing gum. I'm just saying. But it tastes good. Am I right?
I'm addicted. I'm addicted. But I will tell you, I buy the pure and
Yeah,
Sprouts
yeah,
because it doesn't have all that extra stuff.
Right.
But I was like 20 years eating extra until
Oh,
I
no,
knew
no,
what
no.
I knew.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So gum, I didn't put this on there, but chewing gum actually stimulates your vagus nerve too.
Okay.
So, last 3 digits, 866. All right, you get stevia gum. This one's winter or peppermint. It's good. You can keep that too. Okay, what else have we got here? Here is stevia packets. So this is good for coffee or tea. And you could just put it in your purse or take it in your car. Okay, 868. All right. Oh yes. She also told me that Lily's chocolate, which I didn't mention.
That was actually good. Was that
and
the
the
last
chocolate, yes.
It was good.
It's on sale at Publix.
Public.
Buy one, get one free.
Okay.
Only until tomorrow.
What is?
It was dark
Chocolate.
You had the dark chocolate at the last one.
Yeah. But they have milk chocolate,
Lily?
caramel.
Kim,
Yeah.
Lily,
Lily's, Lilys. Okay, who wants a shaker bottle? I think I already did that one. Yeah, that's the one I already did. Okay. 876. Oh, nice. Yay. Try to get the grandkids not to steal that. Good luck. Okay, and the last thing is, have you guys heard of a mini dash?
No.
No one's heard of a mini dash? You're gonna be excited whoever wins this. Okay, so it's PFOA free. It's a little mini waffle maker, but I don't make waffles in it. So I'll tell you what I do. I make chaffles in it. So you take a little bit of shredded cheese, put it on the bottom, crack an egg. I have quail, so I do quail eggs. And then a little bit of cheese on the top, and you close the thing, and it comes out like a crunchy egg sandwich. Like, it's amazing. Okay, so who's gonna win this, and who's making chaffles? Oh, they're so good. I'm gonna have one in the morning. 874. Good. You gonna make David a chaffle in the morning? Sure. Okay. Let me know how it is. Yeah, but if you guys, I think those things, no, they're not expensive. Last year they had them at Target for $5.
Yep.
This year, because of inflation, they're way more. Yeah, they're good. Okay, that's all the gifts I have.
thank you.
All right, you guys, thanks for coming. I hope it was helpful. Good night. Thanks for coming.
I'm sorry.